Hey guys, welcome to New Truth Media and Beyond, 2020 and beyond. Excuse me, just resettle. Guys, I'm just going to show you a few websites. I had a load of notes, and I was going to go on a long thing and talk about race in the West, and particularly in America, particularly in politics, and how absurd and ridiculous it is, and how we're all human and we should just realize that, particularly in politics, particularly when they work out demographics. I was going to talk about how personally I think that they've pretty much made up a demographic in terms of Hispanics, and I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory way. I just mean that growing up, I lived in Spain for a year when I was young. I've frequently been back to Spain on vacation and so on. And I see them as Caucasian, basically. Again, I hope that doesn't insult anyone, because I don't mean it to. What I mean is they don't have any defining features, for example, like an Asian word or a black person. They look, in terms of features, like Caucasians who've spent more time in the sun. And then, of course, if you get to South American Latinas and or whatever they like to call them, group these people in, it's just hotter countries. And again, I don't mean to sound kind of small-minded or bigoted. I mean this because I look at people just, I don't look through any particular lens, and the only things that I notice or anything you might notice about any human. If someone has a particularly massive nose, whatever color they are, you'd notice it. Or for example, you get like, in terms of black people, you get like a variation of skin pigmentation. So you get very, very dark skinned black people and light skinned black people, and there's a contrast. In the same respect, as I'm saying, with white people, you get those insanely white people that are so white they're almost translucent. You can almost see through them. They're so white in every way, like strikingly white. But yeah, but that's always just, at first sight, prima facie. But it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make you think anything. Shouldn't make you judge that person in any way. I mean, for example, I've got a friend who is English, white Caucasian English through and through, but he's got that kind of olive skin we might associate with, like, Italians, for example. Everyone calls them white, but the next door country, Spanish, they're Hispanics. They're because don't forget, they're the same people that live in South America. They just emigrate, colonized, emigrated there. So it's strange, and yeah, my friend, if he goes on holiday on vacation to a hot country for a week or two, he comes back looking like a Spaniard or like a Mexican or like anyone else. It's a bit of a running joke. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point. Yeah, I think that was all I wanted. I had loads of notes, but my videos are too long, so basically, the famous MLK Junior line, you know, about about the content of people's character and not their skin, and how he wants his children to grow up in a world where that's the case. Well, it kind of was the case for a bit, and now we seem to be reversing it. And the media and whatever this dark force is that I've mentioned a few times, they're behind this, and I don't know why. It's nefarious as hell. I really dislike it, because if you I mean, that couldn't be more correct. And it's certainly how I live my life, and it's how the majority of people, I would hope. And again, I don't want to go on to dodgy ground here, but this narrative again is suggesting that only white people can be racist for a start, whereas actually, if you go to other countries, if you know other people, my wife is black. She's xenophobic, not in a bad way, but she's talking about Somalis and or whatever, and I'm sure they talk about Jamaicans and different, people do. People are naturally like that, and I think that's what we're forgetting. Is you just need to kind of embrace that. There's racism, as we would call it, in loads of other countries. Because it's just accepted and talked about, and they'll shout across the street and say this, that, and the other. But there's nothing like deep and nefarious and evil about it. It's just actually honesty. It's just people being honest, and they don't have race issues like we purport to have in the West, and especially in the States. So let me just show you a couple of websites, because this is about this. Now, I had to search. I had to use my VPN. I had to try from several different countries using Brave browser, which I highly recommend, and and obviously not Google, because Google is implicit and part of this. So okay, and by the way, if there's anyone under 18 or anyone who's affected by there's some fairly gruesome images coming up, so I'll just scroll through this, and then obviously you can pause if you want to read it. But this is about the white genocide and torture and rape of white farmers, because a bill was passed by a recently new government in South Africa that have decided to bring the land back to the sort of indigenous population, and they claim, because they claim that whites colonized it and it's not really theirs. And they've passed the bill, and I don't know how they intend to do it, but this seems to have given carte blanche to a lot of people, a lot of hatred and a lot of violence. So if you look at this, more than 70,000 whites have been murdered, and untold numbers have been robbed, raped and tortured. Now, if we just look at some of this, this is just horrific. The one coming up just gets me the most, because it's Dark Ages stuff. But this is just some of the stuff. I mean, makes you sick. This, someone was skinned. I mean, tortured, skinned. I mean, this is horrific. This is not fake news. This is real. And there's an effort in the West by Google and the establishment media to dare to call this a myth and play it down and say that it's a gift to the far right, which I'll show you. But this is, and there's a history of this as well, long history of this. What else have I got here? So there's something here that this isn't too, I don't know why I added this. It's just something I found that contradicts. Yeah, this isn't really relevant. It just contradicted some of the stuff I was finding on Google. Again, so I'll just scroll through this so that you can kind of pause and read it if you like. You can also see the URL up there if you want to read any of this, because it is damn hard to find. But my goal isn't to kind of prove one side wrong or the other. I just actually want the facts and the reality to actually come through, because this doesn't fit particularly America's narrative of white, white people are bad basically and responsible for everything. They bury it. I mean, here's another one about the farmer's wife shot and raped in front of her children after gunmen molested her daughter during revenge attack in South Africa. I mean, that's just horrific. This is The Sun. This is a newspaper in my country, in the UK. This is not fake news. This is not fake news. So again, I want to keep this as short as possible. This guy his pictures of the bullet holes that they shot their way in, etc. And then here's a report. South African murders up 21,022, rape up 41,500. Report on the crime situation in the Republic of South Africa shows that in most categories crime is up, and this is particularly true for murder, rape and assault. The report, compiled by the South African Police Service, presents crime data covering 12 months between April 18 to March 19. Also shows the statistical data for previous 12-month periods going back. Okay, so again, this is not fake news. Again, 70,000 whites murdered in modern South Africa. Okay, Obama's African legacy. I'm going to take whatever this this article's angle with a pinch of salt, but nonetheless, that's another horrific figure. I don't care what they're going into about Obama's legacy here. That doesn't matter. And then I thought I'd end with this, because a lot of people don't know this. Again, I'm not trying to make any kind of point fingers or anything. I just thought I'd point it out. So the first legal slave owner in American history was a black tobacco farmer named Anthony Johnson. North Carolina's largest slaveholder in 1860 was a black plantation owner named William Ellison. American Indians owned thousands of black slaves. In 1830, there were 3,775 free black people who owned 12,740 black slaves. Many black slaves were allowed to hold jobs, own businesses, and own real estate. Brutal black-on-black slavery was common in Africa for thousands of years. Well, I think lots of people knew that, at least. I mean, that's where the idea came from when we colonized the place. Most slaves brought to America from Africa were purchased from black slave owners. Slavery was common for thousands of years, and white people ended chattel slavery. Also, white people were subject to slavery by North African Muslims and who else? I had some stats here. The point is every race, every person has been enslaved, has been treated brutally. Let's get back to me, my ugly mug. Hello again. The point is we have a dark history, a dark past. I mean, the Japanese joined Hitler and the Nazis. I mean, there isn't a country you can point at that is perfect. I'm sure you can even find something Switzerland, something terrible Switzerland's done, I'm sure. We have a horrible past, and that's where it should stay. It should stay in the past. And that's my point. I wanted to make this point. I wanted to call out the media because, there was one last thing I wanted to point out, which was when you do a search on Google with no VPN, this is what you get. The myth of white genocide. South Africa's white far-right outcasts are finding friends. I mean, the people trying to... that is the very fact that even if this had only happened to one family, the fact that people are trying to debunk it because it doesn't fit their narrative is evil, in my opinion. And I think this should be addressed, and it shouldn't matter who you are. You should really care about this, because this should happen to nobody. And this is why this thing of trying to right historical wrongs, as they're trying to do in South Africa, the suggestions of reparations in America. I mean, yes, okay, in theory, it's a good idea, it's a nice idea. But how do you work it out? How do you divvy it out? How do you work out who gets what? How much? Some people get more than you get. Some people saying, "Well, hang on, why have you got more than me?" It's just a nightmare, and that is the problem they're having in South Africa now. It's like, how do you have a peaceful transition of the land? And how do you work out who's owed what? And this is the problem. So instead, people are taking it into their own hands. And clearly in a lot of ways in brutal fashion. Even if those numbers are exaggerated, I'm going to do more. Let me know in the comments if you want me to research this more, and just to prove that this is not a myth. But even if those are exaggerated numbers, like I said, even if it was one family, but still, this should be mainstream news, and this should not be being used for political purposes to say that the far right are using this to say that black people are terrible or whatever. All humans are terrible. We've been terrible in the past, but we can be better. And let's be better. Let's all get on. Let's all be human. Let's all love each other. And politicians, work out your demographics, not by skin color, but by actual demographics, whether it be economical, and what people actually want. People are worried about their children, family issues, health care. Do it that way. Find out what people actually want, rather than trying to divide everybody into things, and everyone's guilty about it. Trump going around saying, the African American vote, the Hispanic vote, Latinos for Trump, and it's in US politics far more than it is in UK politics, because we just lump it all into, we sort of use the word minorities generally. And I'll end with a very controversial statement. That if there's anything more something worrying and more divisive than race, which isn't divisive, as long as people realize that we're all human and we get on, that just shouldn't. We should just find common ground and common cause under a nation, under a set of ideas, as it's worked in America for a long time. Of course, there are problems, but that's the general idea. The problem historically that we've had and that we still face is through religion and ideology. So right now, I put the two in the same category. Right now, there is a bitter culture war going on in the West, particularly in America, that's political, that's left and right, and that's you know, identitarian stuff over whatever, ideology. That's causing incredible division, and religion causes huge division. And I'm going to say that Islam, not Muslims, not individual Muslims, and of course there's like everything, there's a spectrum. We all know, we don't, every time people had to preface this with not the regular Muslims, it's the extreme ones. But nonetheless, it does have to be said that it is the most incompatible religion with Western values, let's say. And it's something that we should be able to talk about without fear. It's not, I'm not suggesting any kind of ban or anything drastic like that, but the conversation does need to be had, I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, click the notification bell, and I will go because I've done 20 minutes. Part 2 of my last video is coming up, and let me know if you want me to do a continuation of this and provide some more proper evidence-based stuff on this subject, particularly because I know they're trying so hard to say it doesn't exist. I have found something where there's, you know, reporters on the ground and stuff. So if you'd like to see that, then let me know, and I will shut up now. So yeah, please do all those things. If you like it, please comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.